Hello YouTube pipers, Double O Pipe here, or aka Rick. I'm going to open this tub of Granger and see what it's like today in my new pipe. Smells like any Codger brand. Blend. Brand. I don't know what I just said. The new pipe. Now this feels moist right from the get-go. I mean, it's not dripping wet, but it's not bad. I had to take my old TV set to the dump. Did that this morning, along with some other electrical equipment and some batteries and a couple of those fluorescent lights that we can't just toss in the garbage like we used to could before we had to use fluorescent lights. Some of these new things they call progress aren't progress to me. They're just a pain in the arse. But what can you do? The government says you got to do this, so you got to do this. At any rate, we shall see what this is like. It's official. I'm a Codger. I like these Codger blends. I like them very much. Right up there with Carter Hall. One of these days I'll be able to explain to you what I taste, but right now it's just a nice, smooth, smoky feel across the tongue. No bite. Pleasant. What more can I say? Pleasant. My new TV doesn't get here until Tuesday, August 1st. My son said he'd come over and help me set it up. So it'll be another week before he comes over. I have the table back there because it was too big for the table I had, so I had to order a new table as well. It's back there, and naturally, it's got to be put together. Everything has to be put together these days. Fine tobacco. My mind just went back to the LSMFD. MFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, or loose straps mean floppy. Well, we won't go into that. Kids, what they come up with. I think you should try this. Yesterday I had my beverage, which was a stout and a mild mixed together, so it was 2 beers. I don't drink much, so by the end of the thing I was making here, and by the time I finished off both bottles, I was pretty looped. I've been working with that Duolingo for a little over a year now, trying to learn Spanish. I'll never learn that language. And I just started doing the German because I took German in college. And the German comes much easier than the Spanish. I don't know why the Spanish is so difficult. I like the sound of it, and I like the way it feels whenever you say it, and the rolling of the R's and such. But for some reason, I've taken it several times, and it just never clicks in my mind. Any of y'all tried that? I started taking it back when I was in pharmacy in Pensacola, because we had some Spanish-speaking customers, and I thought that I would be able to talk to them, but like I said, it's never clicked. Just never clicked. I'll keep trying, but I don't know. I just don't know. Well, I told you guys about my cousin who spent his short life in a wheelchair. It wasn't actually a wheelchair, it was a stroller that we pushed because his life didn't last that long, and he never got big enough to sit in a wheelchair, to be truthful. But my mother took us everywhere. And one of our favorite places was the Old Charleston Museum. It was in an old building downtown, not very far downtown, just go across the bridge, and it was 3 or 4 streets over. When I was stationed in Iceland, somehow it caught fire and burned down, which was a crying shame. This was a museum that didn't charge anybody admission. They had all of their exhibits there in the one big building, one room, and an upstairs. Like I say, it was an old building. I think it had been there since just after the Civil War. I forget what it was used for originally, but excuse me, that doggone frog. And I'm not sure when they made it into the museum, but from the time I remember it, it was a museum. And my cousin and I both loved that place. And it was always a big treat when we got to go there. Just one time we went there. With the main purpose of seeing the Mummy this time. We had a couple of nights before seen the movie with Boris Karloff called The Mummy on TV on Friday Night Fright, whatever it was called back then. All those old movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Werewolf or the Wolfman. But this particular I tell you, I don't know where that frog comes from, and it just hates to leave. At any rate, the latest one had been the Mummy, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to get into the museum. Well, I ran up the steps, went through the entrance. My mother was bringing him up in his stroller, which was not an easy trick with those steps. And she finally got to the door, and getting it over the threshold, she called me to come back. Excuse me. And I came back. She said, "Will you help me with this, get the stroller over the threshold?" And I said, "Sure." So I picked up the front end, and she picked up the back end, and we pulled it forward. And we were on the old dusty boards, because these old boards, nothing had been done to them in all the years that they had been there, I don't think. And you could see where it was worn, where people had walked, and the boards squeaked whenever you stepped on them. Not everywhere, but, you know, in places. But I don't think those old boards had seen a stain or wax in close to 100 years. And there was dust. You could smell the dust in the air, and as the sun shone through the windows, that dust was lined up in the sunbeams. You could see it dancing. You could breathe in the age of that place and everything that was in it. And we walked in, and we looked up, because up above us, hung from the ceiling, was the bones and skeleton structure of a whale that had been caught off the coast of South Carolina. And it was always a thrill to walk under that thing. And kind of watch it move beyond you as you walked under it into the back of the museum. And we were looking up at it this time, and my cousin said, "How much do you think that thing weighs?" And I said, "Oh, it's got to weigh at least a ton. I mean, those are big animals." And you could see the worry in his eyes, thinking, "We better get out from under this before it falls on us," until my mother finally pushed him out from underneath it. That was always the first thing you saw, as the bones of the whale sort of, well, they were hanging from the ceiling, like I say, and it was like he was moving whenever you were watching overhead as you walked along, especially to children. Well, we said, "Where are the mummies? Where are the mummies?" because they had mummies in the back. My mother said, they're in the back, we'll get there. And we walked along. There were glass cases with all kinds of specimens of animals and such. Over against the wall they had glass cases with the backgrounds painted with scenes from what would have been their native area, stuffed animals. And there were, shrunken heads along the sides. But we wanted to see the mummy. So we started walking back toward there, the board squeaking beneath our feet. And I saw a sign at the back that said live snakes. I forgot about the mummy, and I started running to the live snakes. And they had a board running across the bottom so that short people like me could see into the windows, because they had several different ones with a window and a little diorama with a background and some leaves and branches in the bottom that the snake could crawl around in. And Mom pushed my cousin over there where I was. He couldn't get out of his stroller. My mother couldn't pick him up. So I had to tell him what was in there. And he said, what's in there? What's in there? And I told him what was in the first one and moved on to the next one and told him what was in there, read the plaque. He said, I wish I could see those. And I said, I know, but what we can do is when we get back, we can look in the encyclopedia and I'll show you the pictures, because I'll try and remember what's here. And we looked at all of them. They had garden variety snakes, and they also had poisonous snakes. And after we got to the end and I told him what that one looked like, he was okay with it all. We went back up. We got to the area where the mummy was. Big glass case right in the middle of the floor, with the mummy sitting right there. And we were tall enough we could see it. And we both kind of looked at it real hard. An old gray body in tattered wrappings, with the face, the wrappings around the head cut away, teeth protruding from leathery lips, a nose that was kind of shrunken down, and eyes that were hollow. And we both looked at that real hard, and both of us saw those eyes begin to glow and kind of look in our direction, and slowly it was rising. Both of us saw this because we had just seen the movie The Mummy, and it started to rise to both of us, and we looked at it and we got scared because it was beginning to sit up, and we knew it was going to come after us, and we started to scream, both of us. And my mother said, well, what do you think? Because she was bored. And all of a sudden we looked and the mummy was right there. It was just as still as death, with, just cavernous eyes. There was no movement, no nothing. And we both went, whew. And we both at the same time said, can we go now? My mother said, go now? We only just got here. And we both said, yeah, we're ready to go now. We both had the same imagination or something. Because we both saw the same thing. So she said, yeah, we can go now. If that's really what you want to do. And we both shook our head and said, yeah, we want to get out of here. So we passed the shrunken heads and the stuffed animals over to the side. There was no way we could go upstairs anyway because he couldn't go up. There was no elevator to get us up there. We had to go up steps. So we got to the door and we got the stroller over the threshold, and both at the same time said, "Can we get ice cream?" And my mother said, "Sure, we can get some ice cream." We both saw that thing rising. Man, kids. What an active imagination kids have. I like this tobacco. One of these days I'm going to be able to tell you what I taste. But as it is now, it just tastes good. I don't know how to explain it. So much for the Mummy. That museum, though, it was a priceless place. They somehow saved all the things that were in there, and they put them in a brand new building further downtown. I went there once, and it was just so new. All the, I don't know what you would say, all the romance of the things that were in this museum, the romance of the museum itself being old itself. It was ancient, so that all the ancient things that were in there were at home in this new environment, this sterile, I don't know, it's just, for me, I didn't care for it, so I've never been back. I went that one time, but the romance of the place was gone. They still had the steps and the columns, and the land has not been touched. It's a park now, but the building itself is long gone. Success at keeping this one alight is less than usual. I don't know whether it's the tobacco or just the way I stuffed it in the pipe. I don't know. I'm still learning. So much for me and my tales of old. I wish you all the best. Hope you have a good weekend. Take care. God bless you until the next time.